Yeah, do we want to like, should I just start talking, or like, do you want to introduce the podcast a little bit first, or like?
That's a good question.
All right, I got into Deerhoof about, I guess, like 3 or 4 years ago now, and I had always known about Deerhoof. Like, I grew up listening to a band called Deer Hunter when I was a teenager, and anytime you'd search for them, like, Deerhoof would pop up nearby, and I always like clicked on their stuff and just looked at it for a moment and was like, these guys look okay, and just moved on. So I never really gave them like a chance until just recently, for whatever reason. And I was like, oh, I know why, because I was really getting into like noisy, like dissonant music, and so I found Deerhoof like because I was looking for other bands and they popped up, somewhere along the line, and like I really think like they sort of like not like invented a new style or something, but like they have like their own flavor of how to play like rock music, or like how to play like even pop music. Like it's almost like they all think as a collective unit, and like all their songs are sort of structured in a way that you can hear the song and be like, that's Deerhoof. Mm-hmm. But it takes a while to even like understand that formula. You have to listen to a lot of them to like to find that structure over time. And that's like, I really appreciate that about them, is that they're so far ahead of like just conventional music that they're grounded in their own method, and like you have to like access it enough to understand it, Mm-hmm. And this album, I think, is like, I've listened to probably like there's still a couple of their albums that I haven't even listened to yet, because they have like between 25 and 30 at this point. But this one, in my estimation of what I've heard, is probably like one of the more accessible ones. Like the more, it'd be if I wanted to like get someone into Deerhoof, I'd be like, listen to this and listen to like their newer one, Miracle Level, because they both have like rock and pop like aesthetics to them, but they also have that like classic Deerhoof sound that like you can more easily anticipate what the rest of their music's going to sound like if you listen to those ones first. But yeah, my main appreciation for them is they're super noisy and dissonant, and like they have odd meter throughout all their music, and a lot of it is atonal, and in the midst of all that, like they are able to create like really joyful, beautiful music, and like it just comes out of nowhere because their songs are so like in your face and like unstructured, sort of, that like shit just comes in and out, like. And so I love that about them, because again, it like took me a while to get used to that way of hearing them. So this particular album came out in 2021. I think it was self-released. I'm pretty sure Deerhoof, they were on a few different labels throughout their career, but like I think they're self-releasing their music now. I could be wrong though, so I might have to like look into that later. But just to go, I guess, song by song. The first track, Be Unbarred, O Ye Gates of Hell. So I really like this one because it's got like a joyful, like it's got like on one hand like a really joyful, but on the other hand a really like chaotic sound, and like that's classic Deerhoof. The drums sort of sound like, first of all, his snare on this song and then every other song on this record is like amazing to me, but the drums sound like a gun. Like it sounds like he's like firing his drum set when he plays it. Like, and I don't know if it's by virtue of like how they produce their music or just because he's like the main member of the band, but like his drumming on all their albums always comes off like so aggressively good. Like it's so like in your face, and it's like the centerpiece, and you can't help like, Deerhoof's the only band where I'll get drum tracks stuck in my head versus like actual songs and melodies and stuff, like, but this song definitely is one of those for like his drumming. I like the guitars on this song and the rest of the album because this album really lends itself to headphones. Like they pan their guitars left and right. They have 2 guitar players, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the band Television. You ever heard Television?
No, I can't say I have.
Well, they were like a 70s and 80s like punk band. They were really famous at like CBGB, and they moved like they were like after the Ramones and the Clash and like all that kind of stuff. Like they developed this technique of playing punk music that like wasn't power chords. It was like one guitar player plays some totally unique riff, and the other guitar player plays their own totally unique riff. And both of those riffs interlink and like complement with each other, you know, and create really like cool. A new sound. And they do that on every track on this album. Like if you put headphones on, you can more clearly hear what's happening from each guitar player. But if you just listen to the album on a pair of speakers or like on, you know, like in the car or something, the guitar almost sounds like one blend of noise, you know. And I love that like detail that like they're able to blend it that way that it sounds like a cohesive sound. There's also like very subtle bells or like jingles on the drums or something, or like he has a tambourine somewhere that he's not directly hitting that is awesome. Like I love that shit. It seems to give it like a fragile quality. And then that one snare we were listening to in the car on the way over, that snare in the second verse, I love that flam, yeah.
Fat flam.
And then the lyrics, like the lyrics are usually the last thing I think about when I listen to Deerhoof, because like they always seem kind of like nonsense, but they're actually not. Like, I think at the same time that they don't really mean anything, they're also like very interpretable in different ways. So you can listen to like a Deerhoof lyric and just think about like associate it with something, you know what I mean? And like that becomes like the meaning of it. So I think they do like a good existential job there. Like their lyrics are always really like, what is this? And then you just sit and think about it for a while, and it starts to like create images in your head, you know, and like it's really cool. But I don't know, yeah, like what did you guys think about that track?
As far as the first track's concerned, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a really solid opening to the album as well. Yeah, I would say it kind of has this... It's a good mission statement for like the beginning of the album, because the album at large, I feel like, is a good mix of like a really like kind of experimental spin on like this brand of rock music. But it is also I kind of got like a joyful and playful vibe out of it too, especially out of the guitar melodies, like the
exactly.
Yeah, I really like that melody.
Yep.
And as far as the album like at large goes, for something like as abstract and like experimental as this was, I thought it was really catchy too. Like, did you guys get that same vibe? Like, I found myself like, after a few listens, there would be multiple different like vocal passages or like guitar melodies that like I'd find myself humming along to at work or something like that, even if I wasn't listening to it.
That's definitely that's definitely part of the appeal of them for me, is like a lot of their stuff sounds noisy at first, and then you find yourself like, oh, that was really good. You go back and listen to it again. You know?
I literally like I turned the album on not knowing. I looked up nothing about Deerhoof, listened to nothing. Because I hadn't heard anything and you guys hadn't showed me anything yet. So just hearing the vocals initially, and then like you said, literally the snare coming in like, I was just like, I like jumped back. But it's so like if you go in with literally nothing, like no expectations, it's honestly such a fun experience, because that song, the first song, goes everywhere. Like the dissonance in the first like guitar chords that are being played made it feel like I was gonna go into like the heaviest shit ever, and then they just hit you with the happiest melody that you've ever heard. I thought it was really funny.
They're almost like a kind of punk in a way. Like they're really like, I don't know, they're really like experimental. Like with it, like sometimes it sounds like rock music, but it's like off the wall. You know, like it's just crazy good.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing that you mentioned about the drums. Like, that was one thing I made sure to make note of, was like how punchy the drums were, and it brought me back to when we saw them at Mr. Small's.
Yes.
Everyone in the band did their thing, but the drummer was going in. Like he was putting his entire soul into that.
We were like 4 feet away from that drum kit, dude.
Yeah,
it was right in front of us.
Right there.
He was smacking the shit out of it. It was awesome.
He had
Yeah, it would kill to see them live.
broken cymbals and
great.
shit. Like,
Yeah.
Oh
his
yeah.
hi-hat-
Oh yeah.
his
I
top
forgot
hi-hat-
about that.
His top hi-hat was cracked and peeling up, and every once in a while you'd see him stop like in between notes and just like flip the whole thing around, so it was away from his stick and his finger. The energy he played with, the energy he brought to the stage. I mean, he was literally the front man. The drum set
Pretty
was
much.
foremost on the stage.
Yeah.
And there also wasn't a lot to it. I think that's probably one of the most impressive things to me is
he had
how much he
a
does
bass, a
with
snare,
how little.
a floor tom.
Yeah.
And then he had a top, a rack tom, right?
Yes, and it also had an extra snare on it that you could flip on.
That's right.
As a secondary snare, but that was it. It was 4 things for his hands and 2 things for his feet. That was it. And he does all of this punchy sound and this aggressive, attitude-filled. And it's not even like a bad attitude. It's like the greatest attitude.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's taking such complex things. I'm sorry, we're talking about the songs and stuff, but I'm gonna be talking about the drumming like the whole time.
Go,
Yeah,
go
no,
off,
for
kid.
real.
Yeah.
So, just like his presence on stage, his presence, you can hear it in this whole album. I think is that like he's such a unique drummer. Has such a unique approach where he seems to have all of the rudiments and all of the classic stuff that you would need to be a drummer, but he takes it and he just has his own. He marches to the beat of his own drum, and
It's
it really does sound like
he like trashes it in the best way.
Yes,
He's like,
yes. He just puts his own spin on it, and it ends up being this amazing, explosive, enticing experience, and I love it. I think you really did it justice when you said it sounds like he's firing his drum set when he's playing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it sounds like he's firing a gun, and that gun is his drums. And that's so perfect. I love it. And I don't think, I will say this, the drum intro on the first track is good, but it's not the best one on the album.
No,
It's not the best
No,
one
no,
on the
not at
album.
all. Not by a long shot.
It's really
It's
good.
not. It is really
I would
good.
say the pattern that he plays throughout like the verse in that song is probably one of my favorites on the album. But the intro, it's good, but we'll get to the best intro. So the second track, Department of Corrections, I don't know. In like this is probably one of my least favorites on the album, but it's still one of my favorite Deerhoof songs. So like it's because I pretty much love all their songs. So I don't know, like I love the main riff in this song. I think that like that's so like funky and like gets stuck in my head all the time. It's like at first it almost annoyed me when I heard it, and I was just kind of like, what are they doing here? Like it goes back to that like noisy atonal stuff. But it pays off in the second part. I think the guitars are like super crunchy and thick in that song.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it sounds like mechanical to me, or like it always like this album reminds me, like a lot of parts of it remind me of like industrial like basements and like boiler rooms and like machines and stuff.
God,
like
yeah.
this track is really like that gives me that vibe. It sounds like almost off kilter, like the way they do it. But on a whole, yeah, it's really awesome. The part where it has that guitar, that da-na-na-na-na, and it sounds like they're like meowing or something. It's like meow, meow, like
Yes.
I could picture that like in a nightmare or something. Like, it's so eerie, but like it's so good too. So like, yeah, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that one?
Pretty much exactly what you're saying. It's like nightmarish, but in the best way possible. That the vocals on that one and the first one, I really, like I said, I wasn't sure what to expect when I started listening to them. And the first time I listened through, I was like really confused. I was like, I like just because the lyrical content, like you said, like they're just like meowing in the middle of the song, doing like this most complex atonal riff I've ever heard. I'm like, am I supposed to be taking this seriously at all?
Yeah, right. It's like...
But then, like going back, I don't know if it's my least favorite on the record, but I haven't really explored any other music by them other than like a couple singles. But it's definitely up there for me. I think it's a good like following track too. Like I think I really
it
like,
does flow in well.
Yeah, I like an album that can like kind of tell a story, and
Absolutely.
I think those two tracks are really complementary.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree with that. Like, I don't know if they do it consciously, but their albums all tend to flow pretty well. Like, not compared compared to like a band that does it on purpose. I mean, like I don't know if they do or not, but their music is all I can definitely like get a cohesive sense out of an album from them.
For sure.
I'd say the parts of this track that stuck out to me the most are that intro riff, and I couldn't exactly pin down what I liked about it so much, but now that you mention it, I think it does have like a really funky vibe that like kind of stands out from the rest of the record in a cool way, and it
does kind of stand out from the rest of it, I think.
And it does also have like probably one of the like hooks that have like stuck out in my memory the most, which is interesting because like it's so simple. It's just like agenda no, no, but like that really stuck with me for some. Yeah.
It's just like so good.
Yeah, they played off each other really well, and the vocalist in general, like she's very unique. Like I haven't really heard anyone that sounds like her.
Satomi.
Yeah.
Yeah, they. So I did read this somewhere, and I don't know if it's wrong or not, but like I'll just repeat it. We can cut it out if it's not. But like apparently she moved to the U.S. from Japan and like lived here for 1 week, and then met the drummer at a bar in like San Francisco, and they were both just like, well, I would love to start a band, and then they just did, and that was Deerhoof, and like they instantly. Like, well, they became like popular in that sense, like not like radio popular, but they hit it off and like started recording music right away. I was like, that's so cool. Like, how cool would it be to just move to another country and meet someone and be like, you want to start a band? Boom, like done.
That's what you do for the next 30 years.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't this like I looked up? This is like their 17th album or something. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think I said like 25 or 30 earlier. But that's like counting all their like EPs and other random stuff.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like I think studio albums they have like 17 or 18 now.
Wow. That's awesome.
I really like the quality of the album too, because like it sounds like you said kind of mechanical, and like it obviously has to be precise with all the changing time signatures.
Yeah.
But there's like a raw and roughness to it a little bit.
Absolutely.
That is really, really alluring to me. Like
I agree with that. 100%.
I really like a band that like and they're not even mistakes. Like I'm not hearing any mistakes or anything, but like they can record something and it doesn't have to be like the 1,000th take.
Yeah,
because it's gonna speak for itself anyway.
Yeah, it almost feels like you're there, like seeing them perform it.
I think with that though, there's a certain level of I don't know if this is necessarily the right word, but there's almost like a slop to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And that it's not exactly perfect, but that's what makes it so good is that they're all kind of, within... They're playing such complicated stuff. I mean, I remember, like, as many times as I've listened to that opening track, could not for the life of me count it until we were listening to it in the car on the way here. Just couldn't understand it. It just didn't make sense. It was like rolling over at the wrong time, but it was the right time because they're all in time.
Right.
They all know what they're doing. Even if the execution is, like, not perfectly unison, the fact that they're all playing this stuff with such complexity and all rounding every corner together is really cool.
Yeah,
it's like I think I don't think they have like a standard recording method. Like I think for each album they do like I think I read for this one they like sent each other clips of like riffs they had written, and then like the drummer just like put them all together and then sent them back. And then they recorded this album live. Like, they took the demos they got and went into the studio and just made it. Yeah. But they do in other cases, they'll just, like, do it different ways, So I think that's really cool, too, is, like, they can, like, adapt to whatever situation to record in,
I don't know. It does have a very, very specific charm, this album. Because we've listened to other Deerhoof stuff at work, too.
Yeah, so... I think so, yeah. Like
this particular album is very, very charming in its own way.
Yeah, they all have. Each album has its Deerhoof, but it has like its own little flavor. Like the newer one, Miracle Level. That one almost there's a lot of like crazy breakdowns and shit in that album, but that one's like more peaceful to me overall. Like I think it's like a little more subdued, but that's a whole different subject to get into. But okay, so third track. We grew and we were astonished. I think that's like the most conventional track on the album. Like it's the most it's probably the easiest to understand what they're doing. You know, like if you listen to that song, and even that song has an odd meter and goes in some weird directions, but like overall, I'd say so. I think like the drums on that album or on that track are like pretty sparse, and it's actually kind of refreshing because for the most of that album he's like going all out, or he's like doing a lot of complicated stuff on the drums, but even on this track he's still doing some complicated things occasionally, but it's very restrained, and he's just laying the drums down where they need to be put down to keep the music moving along. But every once in a while he'll just throw in he'll hit a ride cymbal, or like throw in like a little ghost note or something, like, and those are the things that get hook me, you know, and I want to go back and listen to the song again. I also really love that refrain in this song, "Are you ready to go straight to video?" I get that stuck in my head a lot. And the guitars on this track probably are would take center stage, they're very ethereal and peaceful, and remind me of being in a forest or something. And the bass, that underlying thumpy bass that comes in and out, but it's not underlying the whole time, it just fades in and out here and there, gives it that quality too, gives it a wandering searching quality or something. I think that it's definitely the most peaceful track, and it's kind of a little breather before the rest of the music, the rest of the album, or the rest of the tracks on that album.
Yeah, that one really stood out to me kind of the least out of most of them. I think it's probably because of the lack of the drums, because that's always the go-to. I've got Unga Bunga drummer brain.
Big bonk.
If the drums aren't bonking, then I'm not as interested
Not
automatically,
bonking.
and I have to
That I'm not
have to
knocking.
move. It's I have to move past that to really get into a song for the other parts of it.
Right.
You know, and that's something that I don't always do, and this was one of those cases where I didn't do it really, because as many times as this is played at work, I didn't really recognize it. You know,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason. It's not bad, and actually I really do like the refrain in that song. But I think that's a blanket statement from me about Deerhoof in general. A lot of those weird tags and hooks are really, really memorable, partially because the singer is so unique, and partially because their choice of words a lot of the time is very unique in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
But, yeah, overall, pretty good track.
Yeah, we didn't even mention on the first track the "If We Only Had Planted Onions." How are these tomatoes all growing? This refrigerator is so well stocked.
Yeah, whenever I first listened to the album, I didn't have the lyrics up with me, and then I heard that refrigerator on, I'm like, did she say that? Did I hear that right? Did she just say that? Hold up.
And then you just get hit with a machine gun of drums.
Right. Yeah, I liked this track, but it probably didn't stand out to me as much as some of the others, especially on the back half of the album. But I still enjoyed it. It was definitely where it is in the album, I think fits really well as a nice cool down from the things that preceded it, and to again prepare you, like you said, prepare you for the tracks that will come later on.
Right.
It was definitely almost a nice intermission in a way, and yeah, the refrain is definitely one that's stuck in my head quite a bit too. So overall, pretty good.
Oh, shit. All right. Fourth track, my favorite track.
This is also my favorite track.
This is also my favorite.
Scarcity is manufactured. So this track is it's just a bop. That's what I have written down.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, dude.
I'd say if there's a song in 7/4 or 7/8 that you could dance to, it's this one.
Yep.
The drums on this song are phenomenal. The drums, that this was the second Deerhoof album or the third that I heard. But if I would have heard this song before any other Deerhoof song, I would have immediately downloaded all their music and listened to it. That's how good the drums on this song are for me. Like the fills he uses and the fact that he just rolls the entire time and like it never falls out of rhythm and it never like wavers. It's just so perfectly attenuated. Mm-hmm. Like, and then we talked about this earlier too. Like the fact that like the guitar riff that's playing, like the drums sort of like play in between and around it, and like because of that 7/8, like you know they come in and out of or in front of and behind that guitar riff, and I fucking love that. So I think I'm obsessed with how chaotic the groove is on this song. It's like the guitar player Ed Rodriguez. He wrote this guitar part as a tribute to his culture, and so there's a lot of Mexican influence, and like it just has, you could definitely tell like it has that like joyful like Mexican sound to it, you know, like in that guitar.
Huh.
And also the vocals on this one are really good too. Another one of those things that gets stuck in my head. I thought it was night, but it's day. It's every day at once. Like I always am singing that to myself. But yeah, like really, the main thing I could say about this one is just that, like the way he, one for every visible star, that right there, like that whole, when that hits, I'm just like, oh my god, like I love this song, you know, and like I never want to stop listening to that one riff, like. So that's my favorite on the album for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. That when that initial riff started, after the necessary cooldown, but I think in a way that's why the last track is kind of my least favorite on the album as well, because it's followed up by this incredible piece of music, and it's like it kind of gets overshadowed a little bit.
Right.
But like that's kind of why I think the album is structured as well as it is, because like you said, it's a cool down that I think needed to happen to prepare you for what the fuck you were about to do. Which was 7/8 is such a fun time signature, dude.
Hell yeah.
I don't want to pick favorite time signatures because they're like my children.
7/8's great. We don't have favorites. We do have favorites.
We got favorites. I got favorite key signatures too, but we don't talk about that. Yeah, dude, this whole song, and I haven't looked up the lyrics or anything. I'm just kind of going off. So hearing you say like actual parts of the song, and it's becoming
that
like, super
that middle
clear.
part. The lyrics are good too. Behold my house of light. Like
Yes.
that whole part is pretty good. Bankrupter of the rainbow.
Dude,
That's what she says after that. Like, and it's like
what a poet.
You know.
Yeah.
But then I just think about it, like that's pretty cool. Like, so. Yeah, like that's it's almost like this band too. Like their lyrics are good in the sense that, you know, it's like if you get interested in something, then you dig deeper into it. You know, this band rewards you in that way. Like if you get interested in the lyrics and then you actually pull them up and read them, you're like, oh, like this adds a whole other dimension to this music. You know, like I can appreciate it that much more for it.
I was just gonna say, I think what I appreciate most about it is again gonna be the drummer. Greg Saunier is incredible. The fact that he's got ostinato patterns happening with his hands on the snare drum and the hi-hat, but he's outlining the time signature with his feet in a different time signature is so cool to me. And then for it to sound so crazy and groovy and something to dance to, like you said, it almost does remind me of that breakdown from Fool in the Rain by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, it does
It reminds me of that. It's got the same frantic kind of vibe to it.
Right.
But I think it is, in many ways, more fun to listen to than that. Sometimes he's hitting 4 notes in a row with his hands, almost playing flams for the ostinato pattern, while still outlining the time signature with his bass drum. And that, to me, just screams that he's incredibly experienced. He's incredibly talented. He does everything with so much intention.
Yeah.
And it's written all over this drum track right here, like especially this one.
You could see that when he played live too. Like
Yes.
he'd just be like, bam, you know, like I'm hitting this thing right here, like very intense. Like
That works.
So the 5th track, Ancient Mysteries Described. This is another one. I mean, this band, I've been obsessed with Deerhoof for the past couple of years, so like all their songs are stuck in my head a lot, but this song in particular, like that very beginning drum riff, that's the best drum riff on the album right there. That just the rolls again, like the whole underlying, like he's just rolling the whole time and like accentuating parts of it. Like I almost sometimes think of the drums on this, that like I'll listen to what he's doing and I'll just imagine like 30-second notes under the whole thing, you know, like it's almost a grid, and he's just like slamming different parts of it at different times.
Yeah.
But he's always got that roll going, like, and so yeah, that very first snare fill is amazing, and this track is what a lot of Deerhoof tracks do. It does everything in threes. So instead of like having a riff that repeats 4 times and then goes into the verse or the chorus or something, they do everything 3 times. And so like it took me a while to get used to that, because I would first have to get used to what they were actually playing in the moment and like figure out what they were doing, and then that would repeat 3 times and go away, you know. And it's like, oh shit, and then you have to go back and listen again, and that's how I got so into them too. Is just like, what were they doing, you know, and you just keep going back and listening. And this song is definitely like that. Those interlocking guitars in this song, again, like headphones, you can hear left and right like what they're doing, and it creates that perfect like melody that's really atonal almost, and like it sounds like it's using the same notes like in a way, but like they're like one step behind or something. But it's so cool. Like I don't know. And this one's in what 10/8, but yeah, like again, odd meter, and this song is it's kind of like got very heavy energy. I feel like it's like weather, like in that verse part, like that right there. It's like he's got like, it sounds like rain to me. Like it sounds like the drums are like raining down on you in that song. Yeah. Like they're like nonstop. And I like that subtle switch at the very end of the track, that refrain they play in 10/4, eventually it plays like 2 or 3 times, and then it goes into a 9/4, where they just take one little bar out, and like it just gives it like a groove. Like again, it's like the end of this song is sort of like, it goes from like a really like moody, like kind of angry song in the beginning, and at the end of it is very like funky and dancey. And there's a lot of like drone guitar in this track that I really like a lot. It gets stuck in my head a lot. In that verse part where she says crime is a slow motion love song, that guitar in the background is like clutch. It's so good. And this song also has Mexican influence in the guitars as well, like that refrain chorus part towards the end. Ed Rodriguez again said it was like he was basically borrowing a lot from like his cultural style. There's also this other guitar in that end part that sounds like water. It's like warbly and wobbly, and it gives like again like incohesiveness with the album. It gives it that like off kilter like weird sound sort of, and I just love that shit. The solo at the end, that super playful, super joyful, like makes the song like go from moody to like super happy. And just that's like the essence of that band for me, you know, like they're so good at doing that.
Yeah, this was honestly probably one of my favorites on the record. Had probably, like I said, the Crime is a Slow Motion Love Song section was probably one of the sections that got stuck in my head the most. Just like with the guitars in the background, it had like a nice droning vibe to it, and the Old Gang's cash only like refrain part, whenever like that fucking was it the bass that's doing that and then with the drums behind it, that was probably the first section in the album where I was like, oh shit, and like I started bobbing my head and just going with it. Like one of the grooviest parts of the record for sure. Like I had to like go back to it. I was like, damn, that was groovy. But yeah, this one is definitely one of my favorites. One of the catchier ones, and definitely one of my favorite grooves. Not my favorite overall, but one of the best ones easily.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said something about the bass playing, because I didn't realize that the singer was the bassist until you said something. And just hearing those fucking grooves now and going back and listening to it all made me appreciate it so much more. And just like you said, that fucking bass line is so good. Walking down the street on some shit.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I really appreciate every the musicality of every instrumentalist in the band.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
They're also really tight live.
Oh
I can
yeah.
imagine.
Obviously, I mean we've talked about it already, but pretty much everything you're hearing on the recorded track, you're hearing live.
Yeah, they do it all.
Like there's nothing missing, and it's quite an experience. Did they play this one?
They did not.
They did not play this
no.
one. They did, but they did play Scarcity's
They
Manufactured.
did. Yeah, I was so stoked when they played that.
That's a bummer. I would have liked to hear this one live.
Yeah, this would have been sick live.
I love how this song at the end that after that riff that at the end, it does that in the 10/4 and then it like washes out. Like the guitar it follows that bass riff, but then it just goes wow wow. You know, like it has that flange effect on it. I love that. Like it's again like just really creative, cool shit.
Yeah. I also like, just to go back to the bass, like just how audible the bass is in general.
Yeah,
on this.
definitely.
I've grown up listening to like so many modern like metal bands and stuff that are like super overproduced.
Yep.
And like you can't hear the bass at all.
It's so hard to hear bass on metal albums.
And so like I just wasn't used to it, and so it was just like such a breath of fresh air to have something that like has this feel where it again like not like slop. Like sort of, but I know what you mean by
I don't
it.
even know if that was a good word.
I know what you
because it
I
implies
think that's a good word.
it implies a messiness, but it's not messiness.
But it's not messy because like they know what they're doing.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's like controlled chaos.
It
Basically.
is.
Exactly. No, that's a much better way
Yeah.
to describe it. I don't think slop is good. I think controlled chaos is good.
I think Deerhoof would appreciate you calling it slap.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
probably
I think
one.
so.
Yeah, for sure.
I do.
But yeah, I just like how audible everything is. It's a nice breath of fresh air.
Hell yeah. So Plant Thief, that song went from being one of my least favorites to one of my favorites over a very short period of time. That song sounds like an action movie in the beginning. It's like, it makes me want to like run. Like, I still can't figure out what's happening at all rhythmically in that part. So after the verse where it's bum 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 bum, that guitar part, where it goes into that breakdown part, and she goes, they never want. After she says that and it goes into that other breakdowny part, I have no idea what the fuck is going on there. Like I can't figure out. It's just like siren noise and like crazy. I can't figure out what the rhythm is. But those are, again, like all that effect is just the guitar players. Like they're just making that noise. Like, and it's so cool. And like even that I can't figure out how it's meant to be heard. That shit still gets stuck in my head all the time. And then when it goes into, it breaks out into that, I guess the chorus, I would call it like, they never want, that part is so cool because it goes from that, again, that crazy shit to like just amazing riff, you know, like awesome punk, like rock track, like sound, like out of nowhere. And then after that, it goes right back into that crazy riff again. It's like so chaotic, but again, it sounds perfectly controlled. I think the bass distortion on that song is really cool too. It's like super beefy, and it almost reminds me of like, it's got like the bass might be like distorted or something on that track. And that ending barrage in that song just goes nuts. Like it gets almost fatiguing to me, but then it jumps right back into that they never want. It's just like such a good like chaos. Like that's probably like one of the most chaotic songs for me on that album. Like it's like a good depiction of like it just goes nuts, but then it has these moments where you're like, oh, that's so good, you know? Like
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I was hoping that you wouldn't bring up my favorite part of that song, and you didn't, and that's just that simple fucking The first time I heard that, I was like, why is that the goofiest but the hardest thing I've ever heard? That made me want to slap somebody in the face.
For real.
I was listening to that with Hosek, and he immediately was like, okay. All right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably like my second favorite track on the album, is that whole thing. But just because it has so many of those memorable parts, and it really did sound like I can see that in like a film score.
It's like all over the place.
Yeah, for sure.
I would totally watch a cartoon of Tom and Jerry played to that
With
song.
that song in the background.
I want to see what
Just like beating him with a hammer or something.
I'm really glad you mentioned the thing again with moving from something that almost doesn't make sense, controlled chaos, into something beautiful. I found myself that happens so many times listening to Deerhoof.
Oh yeah.
Like it really takes you in a different direction almost immediately, and then they'll go right back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool, but it was so jarring at first when I first would listen to it.
It's a thing to get used to, for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's part of that acquired taste is that you have to be able to just let them take you somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And it's cool though because some of the, like a lot of the time they'll play something that's really awesome, but they only play it for a short period of time, so it just makes the song good because you want to go back and listen again, you know. And then the more you do that, you just appreciate the rest of the song, you know. And it's like, well, fuck, these guys are really good.
Yeah, this was probably another one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
Dylan, I'm real glad you brought up that last part. Because to segue, that is my favorite groove on the record. That shit went so hard.
So good.
And I wasn't expecting it at all. Just like, just a super aggressive breakdown, and then the sweeps were so like chaotic, but like a little bit rough, but also really precise.
Yeah.
And it just full stank face was going.
It almost sounds
It was crazy.
It almost again like sounds like they're playing like right behind each other, like just by like a millisecond. You know,
Yeah,
something
like just
they're-
like, maybe like a little bit off, but like it still works.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was another one of my favorites. As usual, a really sticky refrain that like manages the "they never were" part, and I really do like the guitar like riff in the beginning of the song. The that was probably one of my favorites. It played off of everything else really well and just really fit. I loved this track.
Hell yeah. So track 7, Our Philosophy is Fiction. This song is moody and it sort of ambles along. The drums again are well, in the beginning at least, are pretty sparse on this song and like just sound like, you know, I'm just kind of walking along. But it's really cool. It's like an eerie song. It reminds me of like the past. It reminds me of like memory. It's very peaceful, but it also has this like regret or like this like sinister sound to it. Like I don't know how to describe that, but like
Right.
this is another one that deserves headphones. Like the guitars, they both play something different in that line, and like it's really cool to hear it like come together. Like, I mentioned Television earlier, but this song reminds me of that band again because it is very reminiscent of like that style. The drums, like he almost in sometimes on this song kind of sounds like bored or like he's just like just there like to keep the beat, but he occasionally will do like a light burst on a cymbal and it kind of like snaps you back into the track. But like overall this song sort of like so sleep, even the lyrics so sleep, it's very like it just kind of makes you want to like drift, you know, and like it's a great song though. It's definitely just like one of the most atmospheric ones and like not the most like catchy or most like memorable in that sense, but I think like as part of the whole album, it like it's like the third track. It like gives you a little moment and like kind of like reels you in a little bit, you know, and is just like peaceful in that way, like compared to the rest of all the craziness on the album.
Yeah, I think this one really it was probably going for the same kind of vibe the third track was going for, but I like it a lot more here. I wrote down like the combination of like the vocals in the beginning with the guitar melody in the background, like that almost like twangy, like
Yeah.
it's like almost like a melancholic like western
Exactly.
vibe almost.
That's
Like
the vibe I got to.
yeah, like I can see like tumbleweeds like
Uh-huh.
turning around in like an abandoned town or something like that. Yeah, like it really stuck out to me. It probably the most out of any track here, honestly, just because of how different it was. And I think they also do the atonal thing really well in here towards the end, where there's just like this wall of like dissonant strings that just linger there for like the last like third of the song.
Hell yeah.
And that really stuck out to me. I'm like, oh wow, like I wasn't expecting it, but it really fit.
Definitely,
and,
yeah.
It was really cool. This was of the more chill songs on here. This was probably my favorite. I would
It's
say.
like on edge. It's like chill, but it's also like
Kind
makes me,
of
like, tense or
uneasy.
something. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Uneasy chill.
Uneasy chill.
That's Lil Jon's new meditation.
Yeah, trademark that. call him up. Be like, hey, get me his agent. I got an idea.
Somebody in here knows
This Friday.
All right, so track 8, Epic Love Poem. That song is just funny to me. Like it's really fun and like bouncy and like joyful. I think I'm fishing. That gets stuck in my head all the fucking time. I think a big one's coming. Like I always say that to myself. It's kind of dancey too. That part where the drums come in and I don't know. That part's like you can kind of like groove a little bit to that. But then it eventually breaks down entirely by the end of the song. I get the sense that like the drums are almost like stuttering in that song. Like he's like playing he has like a particular beat in mind to play on the drums, but it's like he tries to play it and then a half a second goes by and then he successfully plays it. Like that's the vibe I get from the drums on a lot of this track. It's like they're like starting and stopping over and over again really fast, and it gives it this like really like chaotic again like grooviness. That part where it kind of breaks down and she's singing, "You're the big one, you have milk, you can drink underwater." It's like it's just wacky, you know, like, but it's so cool. It kind of like it's like very rewarding to get through that song in itself because it just goes in so many weird, wild directions like that. But then once you finish listening to it, you go back and like keep listening to it. Then again, it just becomes like any other song, and you can like remember all the parts. But like, they're so good at like just throwing in weird shit, and I'm like, what? Like, it took a few listens for me to be able to like anticipate this one entirely. The underwater part at the end, where it's very sparse and like very slow, is like. Where it was a part where I was sort of like, and then it goes back into the chorus, I don't know. And it's just like completes the whole track again. So like, again, they're super good at doing that.
I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one, but I do think this is probably like the most upbeat and like joyful one that I could pick out. Mm-hmm. Just to get like the I think I'm fishing like verse and refrain is just like I don't know, it's so happy and like it really pops and I really like that.
It pops.
Yeah. It slaps.
I think so. There was something else we were listening to recently where the lyrics were in a different language, but they were about something that was nonsensical.
Oh, chai.
Yeah.
It was it was about pork dumplings.
Yes, and falling in love with them.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So that's what these lyrics remind me of. It's like a story. Like sometimes it sounds like a story that doesn't mean anything, and then sometimes it's profound when you think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm fishing doesn't really make me think profoundly. I just like fishing.
Hell yeah.
Oh, we
you
know.
So,
Can you fish?
so
There is a fishing
So
minigame.
this song gets 10 for you because you can fish.
this album is a 10 out of 10 for me because they mentioned fishing.
And by proxy, the album
And
is.
by proxy, the album is automatically a little bit better. Yeah.
The guitar riff in that part though, where she sings "I Think I'm Fishing," is awesome too. It's like really, it's like beefy again. It's like their music. It always like you were saying earlier, Calvin. It like has an attitude, but it's like
It's not bad.
it reminds me of like someone. It reminds me of like if you go to a party and like you see someone you know there, but like this person is just like. Just a little too much, and they like get really close to you and like are up in your shit. You know, like that's like the attitude that like a lot of their music has. It's like boom, you know, like
Yeah.
you listen to it. It's so cool.
Yeah, acquired taste keeps coming back to mind because it certainly is.
Mhm.
But it's so good when you acquire the taste.
Absolutely.
So last track, Divine Comedy. In my opinion, the very beginning of that song and the verse that comes in is like the prettiest part on that album. Like that part where she sings, "Your sympathetic string turned on by..." That whole little thing
Mm-hmm.
is like so. I love that shit. Like the guitar chords on that part are like open chords, and they don't. I think he plays like. He might play like a whatever chord he plays first, and then he only moves like one or two fingers and just sort of like modulates that chord or something. So it's like completely open the whole time on that verse, and the bass is pretty sparse too, and the drums are very like subdued, and it's just like again one of those moments on the album where I like take a step back and just like listen to it and enjoy it, and like I'm not so much trying to like figure out what's technically happening, and it's just really like rewarding and beautiful, that part. And then, like, classically, it does that little funky breakdown where after she sings that verse, it goes into that wow, chicka, bow, 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 now, now, wow, and then it goes right back into the verse again, which is awesome. I think the lyrics are really good on this song. If you read the lyrics, like, entirely, to me it sounds like they're talking about, like, a general unsatisfaction with, like the mediocre things in the world, like, with how like society could be so much more, but it like chooses not to be, or like we're like, you know, holding ourselves back from like greatness or something. Like that's like the vibe I get from like the lyrics, and like we could have so much more like love or like elevation in our relationships and stuff. And then the second half of that song to me is like the answer to that beginning. It's like an explosion of emotion. And it's like also it's the end of the album, so it's like a closing bit, you know, but it just goes off in like a million different directions, and there's no structure to that end part. It's just, it almost sounds like they're all sort of like improvising, but they know what they're doing yet again, you know, but like it's much more loose, that part, than like the rest of the album, and it just goes on for like a pretty long period of time. So like to me it's just like this big release at the end of the album, like the drum change ups, the guitar modulations, like everyone just going wild. Some of it, like, yeah, again, sounds improvised, but it's just cool how, like, they're so tight, like, as musicians. Like, they're so always together. And then the end of that album, it just ends with literally, like, a bang. Like, it's like, that's it, it's over, you know? And then, so it's like a whole package, that album. It's so good.
Yeah, Divine Comedy, I would say this is my favorite song on the album.
Hell yeah.
Just something about, like, specifically the verse part. Like, the first time I heard it, I wasn't listening closely to the lyrics at first, but, like, the way it was performed and, like, the melody behind the vocals, like, just, I don't know, it, like, really hit me on, like, an emotional level that was hard to describe.
Yeah, for sure.
At first, yeah, like, it was just, it's so beautiful. And, yeah, like, looking at the lyrics now, like, you're a sympathetic string turned on by the impossible, which is happening now. Told to blow up on screen from the possible, which is not happening now. You say, okay, you're resonating higher than the song that's playing. Like, that's really profound, I feel like.
Hell yeah.
I feel like you could get a lot out of that. And I do really like the instrumental break after the verse, because there are parts of it. It almost, like the first song, almost kind of feels like a mission statement for the album itself, because there are parts that are really, like... and the song in general, like, the whole verse section is, like... really chill and beautiful, and then when the instrumental break comes in, it's very triumphant in certain sections.
Yeah.
And then they play like that really almost like dissonant section towards the end, that
Yep.
I really like that. Like, it kind of has a little bit of everything that encapsulated the sound of this album, and it was a great way to finish
Just like
it.
like slammed into the last like 30 seconds of the bass
Yeah,
line.
exactly. It's almost like a good summary for the album itself, and yeah, this is the one that like I find myself coming back to the most.
Hell
Just
yeah.
because, especially the verse section, it's so pretty. I love it. So yeah, great way to end the album.
I think to that point as well, the intro, just when the guitar comes in the first time, it's just outlining the arpeggios for the chords, and it's only moving a little bit, like you mentioned. It sounds like it's about to tell you the summary of everything. It sounds like it's about to tell you, like, this is the culmination of this album.
Yeah.
You know, it's got that very much like this is the last song vibe, just
Like
from that,
finisher.
particularly that guitar intro.
Yeah.
When it comes in is really, really, to me, speaks like,
Yeah, it sounds
okay,
like
here's
he's
the end of
going
the story.
somewhere. Yeah.
Here we go. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it was a really good way to end the album, I think, with so much intention too.
Oh yeah, like I almost like closed my eyes and I would see like credits rolling,
Yeah,
like as I
yes.
was listening to it,
Yes.
almost, you know, like a
Yeah,
nice little
yeah.
epilogue.
Yeah, I also really like, and this is probably, I'd rank them in like top 3. This is probably my 3rd favorite song on the album.
Mm-hmm.
It was the longest song on the album, and I think rightfully so. Like, it had that perfect, like you said, ending credits vibe, and it told like a really good story on its own. Dude, everything about this album, it's hard to like keep reiterating the same points, but like, I never really got sick of anything on the album. Like, as soon as the album was over, and like I heard that last like bang moment, I was just
Right.
like, okay, cool. I want to hear about the onions and the tomatoes. So I'm gonna run it back. Yeah, fantastic way to end the album, and I just really appreciate like the whole like cohesive story that it told.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
So I've only got, I had a couple questions to ask you guys about your thoughts on the album, but we pretty much covered them all over just the
Okay.
discussion. But so I just want to ask, like, for posterity's sake, like everyone's favorite and least favorite track on it.
Favorite track is Divine Comedy for sure. Least favorite, hold up, let me pull up the track list real quick. I'd say least favorite's probably We Grew and We Are Astonished. It's not bad by any means, but and you know, for where it is in the album, I think it's in a good spot for the flow of things,
Right.
but it probably is the one that stands out the least, but
Yeah.
by no means a bad song.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. It's probably my least favorite, but it's so like I said before, it's so perfectly placed just before my favorite, which
Yeah.
is Scarcity is Manufactured, and I think listening to the full album, I don't think I would be able to listen to Scarcity is Manufactured if I didn't have that moment of We Grew.
Right.
So necessary. I understand it and I respect it.
For sure.
I'm gonna agree with that again. I think We Grew and We Are Astonished is the weakest on the album, but I think it is so purposeful that what is perhaps the weakest song comes before that. Not just for the break in everything, but also, I mean, it highlights that much more how good of a song Scarcity is Manufactured is, which is my favorite song. And I think that setup is probably intentional that way, to set you up with weaker material, to slap you in the face with some of the best.
Yeah.
You know, I really like that, and I completely agree with that. The drums on Scarcity is Manufactured are far and away my favorite on the album, even if the drum intro for Ancient Mysteries Described is better as a drum break. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my thoughts.
For me, it's been for a long time. Like, it's been hard to decide a favorite. Like, least favorite is definitely We Grew as well. Favorite is going to be Scarcity's Manufactured by default because it's just such a good song. But I put that one up against Be Unbarred, Ancient Mysteries, and Divine Comedy. So it's hard to pick a favorite. But that one for sure, I guess, would say is my favorite.
Epic Love Poem gets shout out for fishing.
Oh, yeah. Overall, it's just a really good album.
Fantastic.
Yeah, overall, this was the first Deerhoof record that I've listened to. And, like, we saw them live, but, like, I still wasn't 100% sure what to expect. But I came away from it, like, every time I listened to it, I got something more out of it and appreciated something more from it. And it's something I can easily see myself coming back to more in the future, especially considering it's a pretty short record.
Yeah, I think it's like a half an hour.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, so it's one that definitely has a lot of replay value. I think the only thing holding me back from being like head over heels for it at the moment are just the lyrics. And not that they're bad or anything like that, it's just because they're so abstract.
Right.
It's such an interpretive work of literature as far as the lyrics go that I don't feel like there's like a definitive meaning to each song or anything
definitely.
like that. Like
I would agree.
it's gonna mean different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And I just don't think I've had enough time to fully stew on that yet.
Right.
I know I'll get there.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for sure. But
Well,
I
yeah.
guarantee you, like a few months from now, like this is going to get very heavy rotation for sure.
Yeah, I could recommend albums that, honestly, like by them that are like heavier, or that are more like thematically focused or something too. You know, like they just have so much shit. They're crazy.
Shit's crazy.
It's
It
crazy.
ain't safe no more. Do they have anything? What was their most recent album? Do you know?
Miracle Level. It was that one. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt right now.
Oh,
I
nice.
bought it for the yeah, it's that album cover. It's that black.
Oh,
black
okay,
one.
yeah, I saw
That was
they
on-
had that on vinyl.
Yeah.
I went to see them.
I was gonna say we're all wearing our favorite musicians.
Just
cool.
a Dream by Nelly. That's the Spotify count.
So good.
Certified Hood Classic.
Dude, honestly, the song Dilemma with Kelly Rowland, that was a banger.
Oh yeah, don't sleep on it. But yeah, do you know if they have anything slated to come out soon?
I don't think they've said anything like definitive if they're putting anything out.
Aren't they still touring?
But yeah, they're touring right now. Yeah. But they tour. I think it's weird. They tour a lot. Like they just go on random tours. Like they don't necessarily do it to like promote albums, you know. Like, but they will occasionally. But yeah, honestly, like what else? Miracle Level is another great one. Mountain Moves is an awesome album.
Gotcha. Add
The
these to
Magic.
library.
That's pretty heavy too. That's like a heavier like I don't know. That one has, if you like that that riff at the end of Plant Thief, that like barragey riff, like
Yeah.
The Magic and what else? La Isla Bonita. Those two records have some pretty like heavy, crazy shit. Offend Maggie, that's amazing. Friend Opportunity, Runners 4. Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. They're
Gotcha.
awesome.
Yeah, these are all getting added to the library for sure.
How long has this been, Cal? Where we at right now?
Ooh, almost 2,000 measures at 120 BPM.
Oh god.
Oh boy.
Yeah, math.
I feel like we started around like 8 or so, something like that. So like
About
you're
an
like a
hour
little
long.
over an hour, yeah.
That was a good.
Yeah, do you guys have like any more thoughts or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm good.
We're closing with Deerhoof forever.
Bow, bow, now, now.